Welcome to the Brute Strength Podcast, bringing you worldwide experts from all areas of health and fitness. We cover training, nutrition, coaching, and mindset. Welcome your host, strength and conditioning coach, 2012 and 2013 CrossFit Games champ, Michael Cazayoux. Mind, body, brute.
Hey, and welcome back. My name is Mike Cazayoux, and you're listening to the Brute Strength Podcast. This week, I'm back on the show with my wife, Adee Cazayoux, and we're talking about our Burning Man experience. We've been thinking about and talking about going to this event, Burning Man, for years, probably since we met, because a lot of people really close to us have gone and all loved it. I actually haven't heard a single person in our close circle that has had anything but an amazing experience. And so on the show, we talk about our experience, our first time, and we start out by talking about what we thought going into it and what Burning Man actually turned out to be. So what it is and what it is not. We talk about how we approached the experience and how you can use our approach going into this event in your life as a means of personal development. And it has something to do with creating an intention and putting your attention on that intention. And that's a way that you can just create your own reality. We talk about what we learned, and these are things like that have helped us in our relationship with ourselves, with each other, as well as other relationships, things that we're taking into our businesses. And finally, we talk about a lot of beliefs that we had that were shattered. And I think these are going to lead to us living happier lives and being able to connect with a lot more people. So this is one of the most impactful experiences that we've ever had. It was super, super fun, but more importantly, it was one of the, if not the most impactful personal development event we've ever been a part of or experience that we've ever had. And so we use this podcast as just an opportunity to kind of distill some of the biggest takeaways for us. And we are definitely still processing what happened. So I hope you guys can get something out of it, because this event for us was certainly impactful. Before we get the show started, if you've been listening to this for some time and haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a review on iTunes. You can head to iTunes, leave any review you want. Just let me know how the show's going, good or bad. Let me know how I'm doing, how I can improve. I would really appreciate it. Have a great day and enjoy the show. What's up, everyone? We are back together on the show, and we went to Burning Man, and we really wanted to record a podcast together because we learned a shitload, and we wanted to pass on to you guys everything that we learned, and thought there's no better way to do that than have a little conversation about it. So this may end up being a two-part thing, but we're going to get through as much as we can today and see how it goes. So let's start out with what we thought Burning Man was. Okay. And yeah, that's a good place to start. What did you think it was before we got there?
Well, I think I had a lot more information than you did, just because I had done so much research on what it was. And so maybe I'll talk about it like before I read Stephen Kotler's book, Stealing Fire. Before I read that book, I thought Burning Man was just like this huge party where people go to get messed up and just like dance, and kind of like what, like an EDM festival, just like anything where people just go crazy in costumes and just really focus on partying. That's what I totally thought it was, until I read Stephen Kotler's Stealing Fire, and he talks a lot about it being different. I don't know if you want me to go into what Burning Man actually is, but what did you think Burning Man was?
Yeah, I thought it was a big ass party where people do a lot of psychedelics, and there was always, from people that I really trusted, there was always this piece that I felt like there was something I didn't understand. Like they weren't fully explaining it, and there was something to it that I didn't understand, and that's why I was so drawn to it. Like I've been to some big festivals that I've partied hard at, and so that part alone wasn't very appealing to me because it's a full week long.
Yeah.
I love to party, but I wasn't going to go for like 7 to 10 days to something just to party. And
Right.
so I felt like there was something more to it.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. That's how I felt when I read that book, and he discussed like different aspects of what it actually is versus this like weird thought of what I thought it actually was. So when we actually got to Burning Man, I mean, and also I just had this really good understanding after doing so much research that it wasn't just a complete free-for-all party like a music festival might be, and that's not like the main focus of what people are doing there. What Burning Man actually is, it is the best way to describe it. It's a really difficult thing to describe in general, but the best way to describe it is it's a temporary city that gets put up in the middle of the desert in Nevada. So it's roughly like 3.5 hours from your closest major city, which would be Reno. So it's really difficult to access. And it is a city that operates under only, I think it's 10 principles. And you can Google what those 10 principles are. But those principles are something that everybody commits to when they go there, and it's really what makes Burning Man work. So what we mean by temporary city is that the desert is completely bare before Burning Man gets there, and they build a city where 80,000 people can live for an entire week, and then the whole city gets taken away, and there's not a single trace that is left of that city once it's gone. Like, really hard to like actually comprehend what that means, but Google Burning Man aerial view and you'll have a good idea of like what that actually looks like and how crazy it is to think that they put up an entire city and they take down an entire city. And a couple of the principles, what we mean by principles, one of them is radical self-reliance. So that means when you go to Burning Man, there is no exchange of money. So if you don't bring a toothbrush to Burning Man, you don't have a place to buy a toothbrush. There's no reason to bring money other than they sell ice and coffee, but you can't buy anything. So if you didn't bring a toothbrush, you're not going to have a toothbrush. But so that means you have to rely on yourself. So you have to have self-reliance for your food. You need to make sure you have water. You need to make sure you have a place to shower. You need to make sure that you have absolutely anything you could possibly need in 7 days to the best of your ability. However, another principle of those principles is radical contribution. So if you didn't bring a toothbrush, there's somebody, like you probably could go maybe ask 1 or 2 people until you find somebody who's just like desperate to contribute a brand new toothbrush to you. So people go there with the intention to contribute as much as they possibly can. Some people contribute music. Some people contribute art that they've created. Some people contribute their intellect and give speeches and talks there. Nobody's getting paid for anything that's being done at Burning Man. So it's really coming from a place of like absolutely just contributing for the sake of contributing. So that's kind of like what makes it work in terms of you don't have to have everything you need, but you got to try as hard as you can because contribution's only going to go so far. And it just teaches you that you need to absolutely rely on yourself. And then the third principle that I think is amazing is it's leave no trace. So you walk through the Burning Man city and there's not a single garbage can anywhere. You don't have like a public space to dispose of your garbage. If you bring garbage, you have to bring garbage out. There's this thing called MOOP in Burning Man. It's matter that is out of place. So MOOP. And that is just like pieces of garbage, pieces of trash. People have MOOP bags that are like Ziploc bags with carabiners that go on their backpacks. If you see anything on the ground, you put it in your MOOP bag and you take it out because if the land is not left in perfect condition, the government doesn't let Burning Man use that land ever again. It's like really difficult to explain, but it's such an interesting thing because it works so well. I mean, because of this MOOP principle, you're walking around Burning Man and not like a normal festival where people might, toss their gum wrappers on the ground or like be a little bit careless about what they leave, and the trash is gross and the porta potties are really like disgusting and not left carefully. Like these people all made this commitment to take care of the space, so it's pretty clean. I think I don't think I saw like garbage really anywhere. Did you see anything?
No, nothing. Yeah, it's really interesting. The understanding and the commitment is that everyone is going to take care of themselves, and that there are people from just about every walk of life, like very poor people to some of the richest people on the planet are all acting as equals in this temporary city. And so everybody's committed to taking care of themselves, but and things happen, right? Like people forget certain things. Like there's so many things that you might need while you're out there that so many people are just likely to forget something.
Yeah.
And with that addition of the radical contribution, people are just waiting for someone to need something, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have an extra pair of socks that they can give someone, an extra pair of batteries for a headlamp, all of these little things that people are just dying to contribute. Now, what I thought contribution meant before I got there was just simple things like a pair of socks or batteries. What I didn't realize was a huge part of Burning Man is contributing either artistic exhibits or experiences. So we did this one really cool thing that was called the Hug Deli. So this one camp created this small little booth, like wooden booth, and there was a menu up top. And on the menu were all of these different types of hugs. You could get a bear hug, a group hug. You could get a side order of like a back scratch or things like that. And the payment was compliments. So the person working the booth, you just have to give them 2 compliments and they would give you a bear hug. And so we pulled up at this booth.
And the booth is not Google Burning Man aerial view. The booth is just randomly in the center of this semicircle that Burning Man is, which is called the playa. So like it's literally in the middle of the desert. Like there's nothing around it. It's just like completely by itself.
Yeah, random booth. So we pull up, we give a couple of compliments, and then we get a hug. And then the people manning the booth ask us if we want to man it for a while. So what we figured out is the person who created it wasn't even there. They just get people to man it, and every person that mans it gets a fill-in before they leave. Mm-hmm. So anyway, there's just a million little bitty things like that, like just experiences for people to have, to connect with each other, to see amazing art, to experience amazing music. And people do this in an enormous way. Sometimes it's as simple as a little booth, and sometimes it's as elaborate as, I think it's the one of the richest people in Mexico had a $5 million art car.
The Mayan warrior art car. If you Google Mayan warrior art car, it has like the most insane lasers and music, and it's just crazy. It's $5 million that it's just to contribute to Burning Man to make people happy.
So they make zero money off of this whatsoever. The person that made this art car. So they did it purely to give people some sense of enjoyment.
Yeah.
So anyway, once we got there, our idea of what Burning Man was just quickly shattered. Mm-hmm. And so now on to the things that we learned, right? Okay. So the first thing that I think we learned was this idea of surrender. And this started to come into play before we even got to Burning Man, because I royally fucked up our flight situation. I thought that I had gotten our RV in Reno, and so we got our flights to Reno. But then the night before our flight, as we're starting to pack, I realized that the RV was in Las Vegas.
Just to paint a picture for those of you that are like maybe not as geographically inclined, but Burning Man is 3.5 hours north of Reno, and Las Vegas is 6.5 hours southeast of Reno. So yeah. So basically, Michael made this 13-hour mistake. We would have to fly into Reno, drive 6.5 hours to get the RV, and then drive 6.5 hours back to Reno, plus the 3.5 hours to get to Burning Man. So he made a very, very, very large mistake.
So we realized this at 9 p.m. on Friday night before we were flying on Saturday. And we had this moment where, and especially Adee had this moment where she could be extremely pissed off at me and kind of hold a resentment against me. And on my end, I could feel shameful and beat myself up about it. And then when she's probably being mean to me, I could, be resentful towards her. And all of this happened really quickly, and I think Adee, you really led this, where you just surrendered to the fact that I made this huge mistake. And instead of choosing to, bitch at me and make a huge deal out of it, you just accepted that this was reality.
Yeah.
And that you were going to choose this, and you were going to choose to have a good time. Right. And so basically one thing I skipped over is that we decided that we were going to drive all the way from Austin to Las Vegas, which was an 18-hour drive. Oh, yeah. And then Las Vegas to Reno to Burning Man. And Adee very, very quickly, like, I don't think you even for 1 second made me feel bad. Like you mentioned that you could have, but you never made me feel bad, right? Because you knew I would do that on my own, right? Yes. I would feel guilty all on my own, and I was already beating up on myself, and you just chose to surrender. And I followed suit very quickly. I
think it like really did set up the week though, because when you're in the desert and you're 3.5 hours from the nearest city, the temperatures change from 100 degrees to 40 degrees. You're in, as much as like Burning Man was amazing and super fun, there are definitely moments throughout the week where you're uncomfortable and it sucks and it's really, really hot, or it's really, really cold, or you don't have exactly what you need. And it's just like kind of this spot that you're in, and you could bitch and complain about it, or you can suffer by like, you're like choosing to have thoughts like this sucks, or I can't believe I'm in this situation, or you can just, be radically self-reliant and just deal with it. Like that's where you're at. Make lemonade out of lemons, So I think that really set the tone for the rest of the week of like, we're about to embark on this adventure the next day anyways. And I know that this is going to be a difficult experience, as much as it's going to be an amazing experience. So why not just like start off by going with the flow?
And we learned this concept a while back of, in life, there is what happened, and then there's the story about what happened. And so in this instance, what happened is I made a mistake. And Adee could have created a story about how I always fuck up and I'm careless, et cetera, et cetera. And what we found is that the story about what happened in our lives is often what causes pain and suffering. And so we just chose to look at what happened and then just choose a new path rather than spend all of our time caught up in a story about what happened.
Yeah.
So next, let's just talk about the opening ceremony and some intention stuff.
Okay, cool. Well,
what was the opening ceremony for you like?
I think that it's important to note before we even like talk about that Burning Man's 80,000 people. I think it's like roughly 80,000 people that are in the desert for a week. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure type of thing. Like you could have multiple different kinds of experiences, and we're just talking about what our experience was like. And having this opening ceremony and this intention setting, I think really helped us have the kind of experience we wanted to have, which was like a positive one where we learned about ourselves and enjoyed art and all that type of stuff and connection and whatnot. So we were really lucky to be a part of a camp that, a camp, meaning like they're in Burning Man. It's a city, and sometimes people get together in what they call camps. And that means that they help each other with food or help each other with certain amenities, and they stay together, like the RVs park close together. They do some activities throughout the week together and separate, but it's like kind of like your little mini, I guess, like
organized group.
Like an organized group within the city. So I guess like a suburb within the city or something like that, like a little town. So we were part of a group that really focused on setting an intention for what you wanted to get out of the week. So the opening ceremony for me was really awesome. It was a mixture of like kind of like a performance as well as strategies for setting intentions. And that looked like there was a guy who did some spoken word, which was really cool. It's like a kind of a mix between poetry and singing. There was a lot of singing together as a group, and talking to other people within the camp that are going to hold you accountable to what the intentions that you set for the week.
Yeah, so the most powerful thing, as Adee was talking about, I think the most powerful thing that we got out of being a part of this camp was the emphasis that they put on intention. A lot of people go to Burning Man, like she said, choose your own adventure. A lot of people go to experience the art and the music and just to party, and that's absolutely fine.
Totally.
We really, really wanted to use it as a means of personal development, and our camp absolutely emphasized that.
Yeah.
They emphasized creating an intention about what you wanted to get out of the week that could better you in some area of your life, whether it be your relationship with yourself, with others, in your intimate relationship, in your career, in your sense of self-worth, like whatever it is that you want to work on, set an intention on it, and then put your attention on that intention. So they said the way to create your own reality is by creating intention and putting your attention on that intention. So basically figure out what you want to do and then just focus on it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't mean that we didn't party and have fun and enjoy the art. It just, it was like something that like we brought our attention to multiple times throughout the week. It was something that we wanted to focus on, something that we wanted to learn, something that we wanted to break through that was maybe something difficult that was going on in our lives, or something that we wanted to transform about ourselves. It's like being a part of that community is a perfect space to lean into trying to break through those parts of your life, just because of the principles that everyone agrees to, how safe it is in terms of discovering those things, having these types of conversations. I don't think I've ever been in a place where I've felt safer to explore the different areas of myself.
So my intentions going into the week, and it kind of changed throughout the week, and I learned things that I didn't plan on learning, but my intentions going into the week, there were two main ones. The first was to take care of Adee more. And this came out of a conversation that we had after a recent backpacking trip that we took, where I really didn't take care of her. And what I realized, and it's shown up in my life in so many different areas, but especially in my relationship with Adee, I will sometimes give just enough in my relationships as long as I feel like there's enough for me left over. Like I'm afraid of being generous sometimes and like taking care of people because I'm so afraid of not having enough for myself. And we were on this pretty grueling backpacking trip where I was suffering just like everyone else, and I was very self-centered, and I was very concerned with just taking care of my own physical needs, that I neglected Adee a pretty good bit. And so we talked about this, got in a little fight about it after, and we talked all about it. And obviously I want to be the type of man that takes care of my woman. Like I deeply, deeply want to do that. And so I went into this week knowing that it would be very physically challenging for me as much as anyone, and that I would have an opportunity to work on this type of person that I want to become. So that was intention number one. Intention number two for me was to treat every conversation as if it's the most important conversation that I could be in. And that came out of me just realizing over time that in a setting where there are a bunch of people, this is where it's highlighted most. In a setting where there are a bunch of people, oftentimes I'll be kind of distracted. Like if I'm not with someone that I'm either super comfortable with or that I think is important, sometimes I'll be distracted, right? I'll be distracted by thinking I want to be in a conversation with someone else.
Yeah.
And it's not like black and white, like I'm totally not present with that person, but there's some level of me being distracted and wanting to be in a conversation with someone else that I really don't like about myself, or didn't like about myself, and I wanted to work on. Mm-hmm. Those were mine. What were yours?
I had two intentions as well. My first intention was self-acceptance. I tend to get my self-worth or my value from external validation. So whether that's like, a great example would be if Michael says, "What do you want to do tonight?" I like immediately tense up. Like I get tension in my chest because I'm nervous that if I suggest like what I actually want to do, I'm he's not going to want to do that. And I just want to do what him or the group wants to do. Like, I want to be a part of the group more. I'm willing to sacrifice my own wants and likes and preferences for the group just because I want them to like me. Whether it's like choosing an outfit or making a decision at work, like I'm deeply concerned with how that's going to affect other people, mostly their perceptions of me. Like, I would love to be like how it's going to affect their life. Like, of course I care about how it's going to affect their life, but it's mostly about like how it's going to affect their perception of me as a person. And I have, it's been popping up a lot in my life. And I think that, I can break through that. I know I can break through that in terms of getting that self-acceptance from myself and making decisions that I think are best, which ultimately I think is best for everybody in the situation. It's best for the group. It's best for myself. I think if I can get that self-acceptance from myself first, I will then be able to show up more genuinely, more authentically, and I'm naturally going to be like inclined to be a part of the group and want to do what everybody wants to do. So I don't think that's something I need to work on. It's more like getting in touch with what I want to do and just loving myself, like thinking I'm beautiful or picking my own outfit without getting insight from somebody else and like being okay with it, that kind of thing. So that was my first intention. And my second intention was freedom, and freedom in the sense of freedom from responsibility, like freedom from what I call anxiety, freedom from judgment, freedom from like needing to do anything. So I really set up, like I have a lot of responsibilities in my life. I have a lot of people that rely on me. I have a lot of things I need to do. And I wanted freedom completely from all of that, and actually like mental freedom. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not feeling that like, you know, that twitch that you get when you like want to check your phone. Like, I didn't want to feel that twitch of, oh my God, like what's going on at work? Like I really wanted to completely.
This is the first time she stopped twitching.
I really wanted to like completely get away from that, which usually takes me a couple of days. But because that was my intention going into Burning Man, I really set the week up with like a container of like, I let everybody know I was definitely disconnecting. I made sure there was no new projects that got put on the plate beforehand, so I wouldn't be like a bottleneck for a bunch of people. I made it like super clear to my family that they weren't going to be able to contact me, and like just setting it up that way. I think even on the ride on the way over, I was already like ready to be completely free of all of that.
Yeah, I think you did a phenomenal job of creating the container for yourself to really let go and disconnect, right? You let everyone know that you were going to be gone like months in advance. Yeah. You told this is really interesting. I don't know if you said this or not, but this is the first time since I've known you that you took a week off of doing check-ins.
Yes.
for all of your athletes. Mm-hmm. So every single week since you started your business, you've done check-ins. And this is the first time that you let people know, and you let them know far in advance, hey, there's going to be 1 weweek that I'm not going to do check-ins.
Yeah, it's probably funny because if any of the athletes that I work with are listening to this, they like, they're probably laughing because they know how much this matters to me. Like other people knowing that I'm there for them. So I let them know, 3 times in the week before, like reminding them of the dates and like we're like really drilling home that like we weren't going to have this check-in on this day, and like making sure that everyone was okay, and like asking for them to respond, being like, okay, I've got it, like just so I could really let go when I was there. So I think that really helped me for sure.
And I think that's all a part of the process, like taking ownership of creating the environment for you to be able to fully let go. A lot of people would just hope that they get there and feel that way, but they wouldn't have taken the responsibility to make sure everything's taken care of beforehand, and they wouldn't have had the same experience.
Mm-hmm. It really helped me for sure.
So let's talk about what we learned.
Okay.
So we'll talk about what we learned for ourselves, and then in our relationship, and then anything else.
Yeah. And I think what we learned so much. I think both of us came back from Burning Man there's a lot of things that we like consciously learned that we like really know are lessons that we learned. And I think there's a bunch of lessons that still have not even like registered yet that we did take in. And we're partially doing this podcast selfishly to integrate all of our lessons into our actual life. We don't want to have gone to Burning Man, learned all these things, then not actually integrated into our lives. So I'm excited to share it with you guys. what I learned for myself. So for myself, with the first intention of self-acceptance, I think that I had a couple like really major breakthroughs of just kind of doing things that I wanted to do, not loving myself and believing that I'm beautiful and that I'm amazing the way that I am is like one thing, but doing things that I want to do was a huge breakthrough for me. So when I got there to Burning Man, there's so many things going on. This is a 7-day experience that 24/7, every single minute of every single day, there's something happening. And I could feel the tension in my body of just wanting to do what other people were doing and not wanting to go and do something by myself so strongly, like the second I got there, just because it's such a community-driven event, that it was like so hard for me to break through that, but I knew it was an intention of mine. So I definitely learned for myself that I do have preferences and I do have things that I want to do. And I had many moments where I was sitting there bored being like, what does Michael want to do? And you were just like tired, or you had to volunteer somewhere. And I had really broken through that when one day I just was like, you know what? I want to take my bike and I want to just go ride around the city all by myself and just like whatever happens. And I was so uncomfortable. I really didn't want to do it. I think I went back and forth like 3 times. I passed you because you were volunteering at the poopy pumper thing. And I passed you like a couple times being like, oh, I forgot something. Like I was just like nervous. Like I was so nervous about doing it. But once I like actually forced myself to go and just ride around and do whatever I wanted, it was like free. It felt like freedom, like the intention of freedom. I can do things by myself. I don't need other people. It's going to be okay. And I feel like it filled, like it was this feeling that's hard to explain, of like it filled my cup, that it gave me like more of permission to be present in all my other experiences. So that was like a huge lesson for me of I used this statement that someone helped me, that I had a conversation with this about there, of if Michael was in another country, or if everyone I was around was in another country, what would I do right now? And then I sat down and I like literally imagined that it wasn't an option to ask anybody what they wanted to do. I'm like, what would I want to do? And I hope that I integrate that into everyday life for sure.
I love it. Yeah, it was cool to see you. It was cool to see you actually practice that intention, because it's one thing to talk about it and it's another thing to do it. And I think it's something that you've talked about for a long time. And I think you've just been trying to kind of wrap your head around it and get over the fear by just talking about it. But it's something that you actually have to go and do and have the experience of what it feels like to just do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And I saw you really like lean into that and get the feeling of everything's okay. Oh my God, this is amazing.
And I had so much fun. Like I went out and I just rode around, because I like, for those of you that don't know, I love art. I do art frequently in my free time. It's a hobby of mine. And I got to go to some art installations that Michael probably wouldn't have even wanted to go to, and like would have wanted to do something else. And I got to meet new and interesting people. I drove by this like phone booth that was just in the middle of the desert randomly, and it was a phone booth, and on top of it said "Talk to God." And as I'm riding by, it starts ringing, and I'm like, God's calling me. Weird. So I would like go and just like randomly just pick up the phone and I talk to God. And I went.
What did God say?
He just basically said, he actually asked me to take my pants off, and I was like, well, no. And then I just hung up and kept going. But it was just funny experiences, meeting new people, getting to just go in any direction that I wanted to go. And I still felt safe. I still felt okay. I still didn't feel like I was missing out. If anything, I felt like actually I like got more than I would have if I would have just done what everybody else wanted me to do.
for me, that first intention of treating every conversation as if it's the most important one, I had hundreds of opportunities to practice this thing. So there were, again, like there were people of all walks of life, including inside of our own camp. There were a lot of people that outside of Burning Man, I really don't see myself ever hanging out with. And so I think what could have happened if I wasn't intentional is that I would have, been physically, like I would have been close to a lot of these people that I really didn't want to be around. And they would have been trying to talk to me, and I would have been trying to like evade them, like get away from them. Mm-hmm. But it was on the top of my mind, right? I'm putting my attention on this intention. So it's on the top of my mind that that's what I'm here to do. And I literally, I would be in the moment with people in a conversation, feeling myself wanting to peel away and choosing to look the person in the eye and listen to what they're saying. And it made it so that I was able to connect with just so many people over there. And I ended up having so many interesting and engaging conversations.
Yeah, I think you had a couple like really amazing conversations in the most random spaces. Like one, I think you're going to talk about one of those things and like learning about our relationship, but the conversation that you like, he just randomly saw a guy like staring at a piece of art, some random guy. I think he was like in his 60s, and you just like had this conversation with this guy and like got a really like amazing lesson from it. And maybe you're never going to speak to that person ever again. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not somebody you would hang out with in regular life. And maybe that all those things that you think are absolutely true, that doesn't mean that person can't provide value to you. It doesn't mean they're not worthy of your attention, and it doesn't mean they don't have something to teach you. And I think what I learned from that too, I ended up adopting this intention that Michael took, because how cool is it to actually pay attention to people that you speak to? But really seeing like he had some surprising like lessons that he learned from some of these interactions. And I think that that's pretty amazing, regardless of whether you want this person to be your next new best friend. Just really being connected to somebody when you're actually talking to them is a great practice to have. And you learn some really cool things. Mm-hmm. And like those are memories you're going to have for a really long time, for sure.
And it goes along with something that I've been intentional about for a while now as well, which is being inclusive, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing to be present with people that you love, but it's a whole nother to extend that to all of humanity. And my own personal philosophy is that I want to be someone that shows up for and engages with and supports anyone that I come across. And this was just a really concrete way to practice it. And so we get back from Burning Man we get back on a Wednesday, and then the next day the WAG staff retreat starts. Mm-hmm. And we are just so exhausted. I literally can't remember a time in recent history at all being more tired. I think the most tired I've been other than that I can remember is like after SEAL Fit or something like that. So we get there and we're exhausted. And so we have every excuse to kind of be down, like low energy and disconnected and just trying to like get through the weekend of the staff retreat. And I've never felt more engaged and interactive with people, I think, in my entire life. Like I had so many amazing conversations with people when I could have just been feeling sorry for myself, tired, and trying to end the day.
I think you also extended that beyond just like the conversations that you were having and already engaging in. But we had a couple moments where, this is the one time of the year that our staff all gets together. This is your only opportunity to have all of the staff in one place and to physically connect with them in person. And you took opportunities to connect with people when you had the opportunity to just go home and go to sleep. So whether we were exhausted, we go to dinner, and a couple of our staff were going back to their hotel to hang out and just continue talking. And nobody would have hated you or been upset if you would have just decided, oh no, I'm tired, I'm going to go home. But instead you pushed through the discomfort of wanting to go home and hung out with the staff anyways, and went to the hotel and had some amazing conversations. And I know that I hope that doesn't go unnoticed, for sure.
What else did you learn about yourself?
Oh, it's so hard to explain Burning Man. Like, it's hard to explain Burning Man without being like, oh my God, that place is so weird, I never want to go there. But one thing that's so amazing about it is it's 80,000 people that are just completely expressing themselves however they want to. You can wear whatever you want. You can wear as little as you want. There's so little that you can do in terms of expressing yourself that is against the rules. Like it's kind of like adult Disneyland, like without any rules. So, for me, getting the opportunity to, see how many different types of people there are out there, different body types there are out there, different beautiful women that are out there, beautiful men that are out there. They all have like such creativity, and the things that they wore and the way that they danced and all of those things and the things that they created were so amazing. It gave me such an appreciation for how beauty can come in so many different ways. And it's not just like one way. Like, I think that I'm deeply in the fitness industry, and it's really easy to be like, that's sexy and that body type is beautiful, and I don't have that body type, so therefore I am not beautiful. But being in this place where people come from so many different walks of life and still being like, damn, like she is so sexy, or, he is really, really sexy too. And it could be one person that looks completely different than the next. Like there was no standard of beauty out there. There is just beautiful, period. And I think if you really go deep into thinking about that, you're automatically a part of that. So because everyone there is beautiful in some way, that means that I'm beautiful in some way. And I think being in that experience and feeling that was so different than conceptually talking about it. And since then, I've felt so much more confident in myself, so much more like I know I am beautiful, and I know that like it might be surprising to some people on this, maybe it's not, but I definitely have like hang-ups about my body, and having come from being 16 years old and really overweight, I've had like a couple experiences in my childhood with friends where I've been teased about my body, like really specifically, and I think I've held on to them for a really long time. But being in the presence of so many different types of beauty helped me realize like I am just a part of that, and it really, really just flipped a switch in my brain, I think.
So what was there's an element of that that's in everyday life where we interact with people of all walks of life, and there's different shapes and sizes and colors and all of this stuff. What was it about Burning Man that had that effect on you?
I think it's a mixture of the like connecting with people. So it's really hard not to connect with people when you're there and not to actually notice them. I think it's really easy in regular life to just like go about your life and not notice how beautiful the waitress is, or how beautiful the cashier is at the grocery store. Like her hair is really awesome, or she has such gorgeous eyes, or whatever it is. Like it could even be just like the energy that they have is so amazing. But you're like so stuck in your own world that you might not even, like, how many times do you guys go to the grocery store and you don't even notice that the cashier is like a human being? Like you just like pay them, get your stuff, and leave. You don't ask them anything about themselves. You don't even notice their name.
Self-checkout.
Yeah, like it's really easy to not connect with. I mean, I could go a whole week without really connecting with anybody. I could get my groceries delivered. I could just connect with people over the computer. I work on the computer. Burning Man is like, it forces you to connect with people to the extent of like nobody shakes hands there. Like you meet somebody, you have to look them in the eye and give them a hug and tell them your name. And it's not just a regular hug, it's a really good hug. And I think that just really forced me to notice the beauty that's out there, and the fact that everyone's wearing like pretty crazy costumes. Like you're wearing whatever the hell you want to wear. There's a lot of nudity around, so it's kind of just like, it makes you note, it catches your attention. It like really makes you notice. Like we had one of our good friends, our relationship coach, was with us in the camp, and she would come out in these like crazy like headpieces and these beautiful dresses that were like had like sequins all over them, and you're just like, it's such an extension of herself being like expressed in her costume, and it just helps you notice it a little bit more. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So what are you doing to help integrate this, and what can someone listening that hasn't been to Burning Man, like how can they, I don't know, try this idea on and explore what you're talking about?
How I'm trying to integrate it is I'm trying to, I took on your intention a little bit for this reason of like making the conversation that you're in actually important, getting to know people, looking for it, like look for beauty all around you. Like it's there. People are there and everyone is beautiful in some way. So like really looking for that, and not in like the cheesy way, like anybody's beautiful. If you don't think like, just there's something about them that is beautiful. And when you're looking at it, I've tried to be on social media a little bit less. Maybe not a little bit less. I love social media. I have arguments with Michael all the time. He's like, it's better for you to be off social media, or like, it's better for your happiness. And I just always was like, well, that's how I connect with my friends. Like, that's what I love to do. It's good for business, all that type of stuff. Getting off of it has helped me really notice what's like, and on social media for me, I'm only seeing one type of beauty because that is what the industry I'm in. I'm only seeing one type of body pretty much. I don't see that much difference. So paying attention to in the regular world. And another thing that's probably much more tactical, less like hypothetical up in the clouds, is that I'll have these thoughts of like, I want to wear a hat with an outfit at nighttime, and I don't have the balls to do it. I'm like, I just can't pull off a hat. Hats don't look good on me. Like I make those statements where at Burning Man, if you wear a hat, nobody's going to judge you. Like you're probably going to get more compliments than you've ever gotten in your life about that hat. And I think that happens in the real world. We just don't have the courage to actually do it. So there's been a couple moments where I'm like, I don't know if I could put this outfit together, or I don't know, wear my hair that way. And I'm just doing it anyways. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't work, but giving myself permission to try things I've never tried before in terms of like my outfits, like bringing a little bit of the crazy costumes back into regular life, I think is helping me a little bit.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about what we learned in our relationship and other relationships.
Yeah, this was the most powerful. I think just because our camp that we were a part of, the theme for the camp is connection, masculinity, and femininity. So we listen to a lot of talks on relationships, like seminars throughout the day in Burning Man, of people that are experts in relationships, connection, collaboration, love. So I think we had some like major lessons in relationships.
Yeah. One of them for me was totally unexpected. One day we're sitting in our RV, I don't know, like 2 or 3 days in, and we were both exhausted. We had gone to sleep super, super late, and I had to get up to do some type of volunteer work. And then we're just sitting in the RV later, and we're both kind of bored. And Adee is trying to basically like catch my gaze. She's trying to look me in the eyes and connect with me. And I'm up in my head, and I'm intentionally not looking her in the eyes. And it started this like small fight, and we talked about why I do that. And it's the first time I ever remember talking about it, but it's definitely not the first time that I've thought about it, because I have intentionally done this for a long time. For years. And we talked about why I do that. And the reason that I think I've done that for a long time is it goes something like this. Like, I'm afraid of it's similar to the backpacking story, where if I give her all of my attention, or my attention in this moment, there's some story about like, I won't have enough for myself. I won't have enough energy or attention left for myself and to take care of what I want to do. And so that there's some version of that going on that makes me intentionally like look away. And anyway, we brought it to the front and we talked about it, and that's deep down, that's not the way that I want to be. Because something that I've learned from our friend Annie is that if I surrender and give myself to Adee and give myself up to the relationship, not like that story about I will have less is actually bullshit. I will actually have more, because I will be more fulfilled. I'll be more, I will be closer to the man that I want to be, which is providing for my woman, which is connecting with my woman, which is, surrendering to, like, basically caring more about what the team needs, what the us needs, than what I need alone, knowing that we can accomplish more together. Something like that.
And on top of that, you naturally are inclined to do what the I needs and what you need. So you don't need to practice that. Like that will happen automatically. Like you will automatically satisfy your own needs just because you're so well practiced.
I'm really good at that.
Yeah, he's so well practiced at doing that. So, but the thing that's also bullshit about that story is in what I think what both of us learned in that moment is if you actually give me attention when I'm looking for it and a certain quality of attention, not like halfway attention, I don't need as much. So the story of I'm going to have less is actually bullshit because if you give me less, I'm going to want more and I'm going to look for more and I'm going to have more moments of trying to get your attention and you're intentionally ignoring me because my cup is half full and I'm looking for your attention. And when I get full from that, I'm like, okay, that checkbox is checked and now I can like let it go and move on to something else. So there is this like, in one of Annie's talks, she described it this way, which I think was like amazing. She described it like a metaphor, the lobster. It's like a lobster metaphor where you're in a relationship and your partner has a vision for the type of person you can be that is greater than who you think you could be. And you pick that person because you want to be the vision that they see for you. Like Michael picked me because he sees the person that I think he can be and he wants to be that person.
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot in the past. Like when I met you, you just immediately saw all of the best qualities in me. And I knew that they were kind of there. I just didn't feel like I was all of those things at the same time and definitely not consistently. But that's just who you saw I was. And it was like this beacon for me to be greater. And that was super attractive to me.
And you have the same vision for me. Like you have this vision of this woman that I am and that I can be. And I want to be that vision that you have for me. And then there's these moments where you have to actually choose to either be that person or the person that you are right now. And this example is one of those moments. And she uses an example of a lobster. So like a lobster is in their shell. And then there's this moment where a lobster grows out of their shell where the little... I'm imagining this like little soft glob inside,
slimy little,
like this slimy little snail,
shell.
Like the little lobster snail that comes out of the shell. And there's this moment in between before they grow the new shell that they're extremely vulnerable and they have to accept like they're no longer going to be in that in that old shell. And maybe they want to go and crawl back into the old shell because they're scared. Like in that moment, anything can eat them, anything can attack them. Like they're so super vulnerable before they get this new shell, but they're committed to knowing, you know, this new shell is going to be a better fit. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be better. It's going to be more protective, but that takes a little bit of faith. Like, I think that's exactly like just having faith and knowing that on the other side is going to be a bigger and better version of yourself. And I think this is a perfect example of that where Michael thinks, you know, giving me attention in that moment is like a piece of himself is dying. Like there's like a death of like this piece of his identity. Like he no longer has this independence that he has, where it might actually be the case. Like there might be this piece of him that he no longer gets to have. But on the other side is something so much better and so much more aligned with the type of man that he wants to be, that he just has to have faith that that's the case. I think this was like a perfect example of that. And I'm sure in our relationship, there are many examples of that occurs.
True that. Yeah. Another way to put what I learned in that experience in particular is that when I don't give Adee my full undivided attention for like, I don't know, some given period of time.
It could be like 30 seconds.
It could be literally 30 seconds. When I don't do that, she's needy. She's very needy. If I give her my full undivided attention, she get like she said, her cup gets filled up very quickly, and then I have so much more space for myself. She's not needy anymore. So it's really like that transformation happened really quickly. Like once I started being different in that week, I noticed myself having more freedom, which is what I was trying to protect in the beginning.
I think that what I realized in the not getting of the attention that I wanted, like for any women or men that are in this experience with their partner and you notice, like, you know, when your partner's intentionally ignoring you. Like, I'm sitting there, I know he knows I'm looking at him, and I know he's intentionally choosing not to look back at me. It's like an extremely painful experience on this side. And not to like make you feel bad about it, but just like that's the reality. Like, it's a really painful experience. That gives me this opportunity to create a story about like, where is his attention? Like, what is he thinking about? Like, and for me, oftentimes that would lead to me feeling threatened by what could possibly be having his attention. Is he more interested in other women? Is he more interested in paying attention to anything else that's more important than me? And it makes me feel small. It makes me feel small. But then when I get the attention and the quality of attention that I'm looking for, whether it's 30 seconds, 5 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, that feeling like almost completely dissipated. Like, I felt big. I felt important. I felt valuable versus small and unimportant. So that was a huge lesson for me, like that sometimes I can notice that I'm feeling like threatened by other things, and that could just be a story because I'm not getting that. Like, I can focus on that. Like, I can remember that no, I am important. I don't need to be threatened by anything else, and I can let that go.
So one of my intentions going into the week was to take care of you more. Mm-hmm. I'm going to check in with you on that. How did I do?
It was really cool to see you show up in that way. Like, so you showed up and it started off with you making that big mistake of not knowing where our RV was, right? Like, our RV's in Las Vegas. We're supposed to go to Reno. It's like a pretty big mistake. We end up deciding to drive. And it showed up right away when, without complaining, there might be some instances in the past where you would have like evenly divided this drive. Like, Adee's going to do half, I'm going to do half. And like, that's just what's fair. No,
that is not true.
Maybe not the driving. Maybe not the driving, but like, in the camping trip in Wyoming, like, you have a plate that's dirty, I have a plate that's dirty, I'm going to clean my plate and you're going to clean your plate, right. like evenly dividing it like that. But even on the drive, like, you totally showed up without complaining at all, like, took control of driving way more than I drove, whether it's like giving me the attention that I was looking for, or taking control of like getting our RV set up or unpacking or packing. Like, you really showed up and gave me space to feel safe and taken care of in so many different ways. I think you could probably talk about the conversation at the Wednesday night party of like the masculinity conversation. And once that happened, it was like even extra, like a different taking care of, I think, could mean a lot of different things. And to me, that doesn't mean like doing things for me necessarily all the time, but just making me feel safe and like your attention, at least a little bit, isn't like, is there anything Adee needs, or is she okay? Is there any way I can help her? Mm-hmm. And noticing if I'm struggling instead of me having to ask for it. I think that happened so much throughout Burning Man. If you noticed that I could use some help instead of me having to ask for it.
Yeah, it was this simple, I think it was a simple decision in the beginning of the week to not, like, I for some reason, I would just always look for, like, everything has to be fair, right? And everybody has to do their part, including in our relationship. And I made this commitment to just doing as much as I saw that I could during the week, knowing that it never makes sense to keep score. You know what I mean?
Yeah, never. And like one really tangible example of this is on the Sunday after the week after Burning Man. So we had our staff retreat. In the staff retreat, I think there's like a lot more. I have a little bit more responsibility than you do at the staff retreat of being there, like being a part of all of the different moments. Like, you had some opportunities to get away and get some rejuvenation time. I didn't have as many opportunities. And then on Sunday, Katie, David's daughter, her name's Katie, and Brent Fikowski were in town. So I had all of Sunday that I was going to go and hang out with them. And I knew that you were going to be home all day on Sunday. I come home on Sunday and I noticed that all of the laundry from Burning Man was done. And I'm like, did you just do all this? And normally, like, it was such a new thing. Like, it was so surprising to me, like this new thing that you did. I was kind of like taken aback by it. Like, what? Like you didn't wait for me to get home so we could do this together. Whereas in the past, Michael would have definitely waited and been like, oh, it'll just be so much faster if we could do this together. Like, he'll convince himself, like, I'm not going to do this right now. I'm not going to like help out in this moment. I'm just going to wait till Adee gets back and we'll do this together. And I'm going to go do what I want to do right now. And coming back and seeing that not being the case and being like, wow, like he just did all of our laundry and like helped put away so much stuff from being a week in the desert was like, I felt completely taken care of in that moment.
Good. It feels good to take care of you. What else did you learn about relationships?
I want you to talk about because I wasn't part of the conversation, but there was a Wednesday night party in our camp, and it was a party that was about masculine and feminine and like the two polarities. That's not like male female, but it's about masculine energy and feminine energy. And you talk about the conversation that you had before the party, and then I'll talk about the lesson that I learned from that.
So basically all of the men, like this party every year brings like, I think they said something like, I want to say 30,000 people come through at some point in the night. So, yeah. And it's not that big of a space. So it's a really popular party. Anyway, all of the men in our camp got together before it started, and we got in a big circle. And the conversation was about providing a safe place for women, basically. And we talked about, like, it was mainly around how to talk to women and treat women and what our body language should be like in a way that creates safety and is not creepy in any way. So just making them feel safe to be fully expressed.
And I think that brought me a lesson in our relationship. So when that night, it was very palpable, the feeling of like, you could be safe to dance however you wanted, to dress however you wanted, to do whatever you wanted as a woman in that space. And you were not going to be disrespected. You weren't going to be objectified. Nobody was going to touch you in a weird way. There was
without consent.
Yeah. There's like definitely going to be consent asked for. It was so palpable that having that feeling of safety allowed you to explore different areas of yourself that you might not have had courage to explore before. And that's like a really exciting feeling. Like, oh, I can, there was like, I could go over and just move however I wanted to move or be however I wanted to be. And I didn't even notice I worried about that sometimes. Like, oh, if I wear this, am I going to get a type of attention that I don't want? Like unwanted attention. That's like something I think women often think about. Like, I don't want to be like asking for, I'm using air quotations, a certain type of attention by wearing this. Like almost like it's wrong to be sexy. And that was not the case in this party at all. And it made me think about our relationship a little bit, like moments where I show up being a little bit more masculine, like goal-driven, purpose-oriented, get shit done, like focus on like momentum, and not being more in my feminine of, up and down of energy, flowing back and forth, like going with the flow and being a little bit more nurturing. And that is when you don't necessarily show up as being that man in this relationship. So if I like ask for something to get done and it doesn't get done, and you didn't help create the safe container of like, oh, okay, I'm safe. I feel good to like be fully lean into being like my feminine self. I am feminine at my core. I will just be the masculine. Like I will show up and be that because shit needs to get done and I want to feel safe and I'm going to take care of myself and I can do that. So I'll show up that way, and that's not attractive to you. So that creates friction in our relationship.
Right. So it's just another another reminder of why I want to get shit done and why I want to be a man of integrity, because I do find it extremely attractive when your energy is all over the place and you're nurturing and you're being your feminine self.
Yeah. So I think that was like a big lesson. I didn't even notice that that's like what would happen, but it's good to notice that. I think it will be able to be more aware of it actually happening in practice in regular life. But I felt completely different for the rest of the week after that Wednesday of like getting your attention and feeling like you were taking care of me and feeling safe. And therefore that like satisfied that need. And then I could be like, okay, I'm ready, like I'm ready to like be myself and explore myself. I don't have to take care of anything else that's going to make me feel safe. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a big lesson.
So let's talk about a couple other beliefs that got shattered. Tell them about the shower.
Oh, the shower. So this one's like a tough conversation to have on a podcast, but I'm going to do it anyways. So in Burning Man, there's like a lot of public nudity. And I've been in situations where there's public nudity before.
And when she says a lot, we would see like maybe one person a day on average, I think. Some days more than others, but it wasn't like the vast majority of people are clothed.
Yes, the vast. I would say like less than 5% of the people out there are nude in some capacity.
But there's just way more nude people at Burning Man than regular life.
Yes. So, and I think that just like brings your attention to it. You're like, whoa, there's like, oh shoot, like that's happening right now. So, I think you like notice it more because it's novel and it's not something that you're used to. And I've been in situations before where whether it's like at a festival or somewhere else, that there's been this like situation where I guess I could be publicly nude or like at a nude beach, and I have chosen not to. Like that's just not what I want to do. It's not what I feel comfortable with. And I had this like belief of like I cannot, like that is just not what I'm going to do. I don't feel comfortable with that. But not in a way that's like genuine and authentic, more in like a fear kind of way, or just completely resistant to the idea, not even trying it on, like not even like exploring that concept, and almost like feeling shameful of my like naked body, like people can't see it. Or I had this belief like it's a special thing that only Michael gets to see. And then I had this moment of realizing, since I was probably like 7 to 10 years old, maybe only 5 people have seen me completely naked. Like it's not that many people. Most of it was probably in dark rooms where it was like they couldn't really see me like that completely and that like noticeably. So on the Friday of being at Burning Man, there's this thing, Dr. Bronner's, if anybody knows the soap, he has a camp over there and he has this thing called the human car wash.
Could be a she.
Dr. Bronner's?
Could be a she.
Oh, it could be a she, I guess. Yeah, why did I
Who
assume?
knows?
Yeah, it could be a she. Well, Dr. Bronner's has a camp at Burning Man. It's like called the human car wash. And this is around 500 people with a line, a 3-hour line waiting outside of people waiting to get into this space. Having an absolute dance party, a completely amazing time, and they are completely naked, like no clothing whatsoever. My heart is racing even talking about it right now. Like I have tension in my chest. I'm just so nervous even thinking about this experience. And we had a group of friends that were like, trust me, they'd been to Burning Man a bunch of times. Like this is the best experience at Burning Man. Like it's the most fun. You're going to leave it being like so rejuvenated. Like trust me, like you're gonna enjoy it. I was like, I did not want to go. This is not what I wanted to do. We end up going. We get into the space. Everyone's having a good time. The first thing you have to do is get completely naked, and very quickly you're so vulnerable. And then also very quickly you notice that it's not a big deal at all. Nobody looks at you funny. I mean, the quickest way I think to get someone to look you straight in the eye is to be completely naked. Like they're just like, nobody there wants to make you feel uncomfortable. So it was just crazy. And then I think 25 people at a time go through this kind of like car wash looking type thing where you go in as a group, and they suds you up with like a bunch of soap, and then they rinse you off with a bunch of water, and then you leave and you go back to the dance party, and then you head out. It was so crazy, the experience, to go from like 5 people to 500 people. Like I 10x'd the amount of people that have now like potentially seen me completely naked.
100x.
Yeah, 100x. You're right. And I cried like right after. I cried. It was just such a crazy, different, beautiful experience that I realized like there's I'm not going to go and be like publicly nude in my regular life, but there's nothing to be ashamed of. I'm like totally okay the way that I am. I am fine. Like it just was, I can't even explain it.
Yeah, it took away for me. It was a very similar experience. Like I've never done anything even remotely close, and I've always felt a little bit of this shame around my body, like it's something that should never be shown. And I don't think that's entirely a natural feeling. I think that's something that we learn in our society, and we learn to be, I don't know, to hide ourselves and to feel.
I think part of it is that the naked body makes other people feel uncomfortable. And so people might project that onto people that are like displaying themselves. And that just like, it kept going and kept going and kept going until like nobody's allowed to like show themselves. It's not allowed, and only in these like really small, weird environments. And it's now like a weird people thing to do. Which I'm not saying I'm going to go and walk around naked in my regular life, but just having the experience with 500 people where it's totally freaking normal. Nobody's looking at you weird. Everyone looks so completely different, and you're just having fun. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was cool to lose some of the discomfort around being around other people and being around their bodies, basically. Is there anything else, other beliefs that were challenged?
You wrote the strike experience.
So one of the really interesting things about Burning Man was that I've always thought that work has to feel like work and should be, or not should be, but work is just always kind of mundane or difficult or challenging. And Burning Man really shattered that belief for me, because they did so many things that made work fun. And the example that really highlighted this the most was the final day of our camp. We have something called Strike, where everyone in camp contributes to breaking down the whole environment. So we had built up these basically like these small buildings and things like that, and we had to all take it down together. And before we even started, the leaders basically they told us that we were going to make this a fun experience. This is going to be one of the funnest times in Burning Man.
Yeah, they did this a lot. Like they really hammered home how fun Strike was going to be, how like exciting it was going to be. It's going to be the best experience of your entire week. Like they really hammered that fact home.
So the way that they did this was they played music the whole time. They had people walking around that were dedicated to making people's experience of Strike better. So they had these beautiful women and men like walking around, passing out fruit and smoothies,
spritzing you with water,
and giving you compliments. Yeah. There were these frequent breaks where we would all come together and do some like super short but fun activity, like just breaking up kind of the monotonous task of carrying dance and parties, loading, and
like 15-second dance party. They would just like get everyone to stop.
That was one of the small breaks. Yeah. And what it taught me was that we can interject this into our lives and especially our careers. And this, I don't have any like concrete takeaways yet from this insight, but a conversation that Adee and I are starting to have is like, where can we include more fun in our work environment? Where can we make it a more exciting place to work? Where can we add more creativity? Where can we bring some of that Strike experience to our careers?
Yeah. think it was also another example of what we keep referring to as like creating a container. So similar to, and I think we have put that into practice a little bit already, like whether it was creating the container of making women feel safe at that party, or creating the container of making this like really physically strenuous task fun, and like setting it up beforehand, telling everyone it's going to be fun, explaining why it's going to be fun, having people that like genuinely have smiles on their faces when they're talking about it and talking about past experiences, creating that container for everyone to have permission to believe that and to enact that and to do that. I think that we've already, done that a little bit even in the staff retreat. Like the first thing we did in the staff retreat was, Michael led this meditation for everybody to close their eyes and to think about what they were about to go through and to talk about how amazing it was and how everybody look around and the people sitting beside you and this is your community. And that really sets a container for how the rest of the weekend went. I think it's really amazing how they do that.
In conclusion, I think the most impactful thing for me was exactly what you just said, the emphasis put on intention. And I think it's something that I want to take into my life and practice regularly. I think if we're intentional about where we want to go in life in any area, and we put our focus on it, then we can literally do anything that we want.
Or at least move towards that direction. And you're moving forward, you're seeing changes, you're seeing progress, and maybe that leads you to a different direction, but you're going somewhere.
So like Adee said, Burning Man is a choose your adventure type of event. We went into it mainly thinking it was going to be a big party and kind of knowing there was something more. And our minds were completely blown by the different possibilities of that amazing event. We got some incredible insights into our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with others. We made what could become some lifelong friends, and we really deeply connected with some friends that we already had. So we went into it wanting to enjoy ourselves, but not wanting to enjoy it enough to go back. And unfortunately, I think that, or I can't imagine not going back many more times.
Yes. And if any of you are thinking about going, I would definitely do a bunch of research, talk to people that you, that maybe a friend of a friend has gone before, talk to them, get some packing lists online, make sure you're very prepared and really understand what you're getting yourself into, and think about the kind of experience that you want it to be and create that container to make sure that that's the kind of experience it's going to be. It's really easy to get overwhelmed over there, and having those intentions made it much easier to be like more sustainable and not be like totally overstimulated just because there's so much going on. And I hope that some people go and have some pretty amazing experiences over there.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
This episode is finished, but your training journey continues. Head over to brutestrengthtraining.com/SSW and grab your free pack of 32 accessory workouts that you can incorporate into your training and start improving your strength immediately. That's brutestrengthtraining.com/SSW.